Hello everyone, welcome back. I hope everyone is doing well and having a good Thursday and you're all taking care of yourselves. The purpose of today's video is twofold, and I'm really going to try to make sure that we're able to cover both in this video. First thing I want to talk about is how to find scholarly sources and use the library database to do so. The second is I want to talk about how to evaluate other kinds of sources that may not be scholarly and how to assess their credibility, which all of these are things that you're going to want to be able to do for your synthesis grid, because you'll want to have at least one scholarly source and you'll want to be able to talk to a certain extent about the credibility of all of your sources. As a reminder, you have three options for looking for sources. And they are all under week 13 materials and modules. If you go down past materials to sources for research, you'll see that you have this research bank, which all of you should have had a chance to kind of look through, because this is what was supposed to kind of give you a sense of the different topics. And then you also have the library databases, which you will want to look through at least if anything to get just your scholarly source. And then you have some of the options available for popular sources. Now, these aren't the only websites that have popular sources, but I just want to really make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of the kinds of sources that you can use. And so I'm going to ask that for now you kind of stay within either these websites, your research bank, or library databases, just to keep you safe in terms of meeting the requirements of this assignment. If there is another source that you think is credible, that you want to run by me, I am more than happy to give you the green light or red light on that one. But just to kind of be safe, I'd recommend sticking to this list. So the first thing to understand is that the only way to access a scholarly source is by going to the databases on the library website. So you'll need to go to this website, and then once you're there, this is what you should see. So you would go to A to Z database list, and then there are several different databases there are actually a lot of different databases that you can choose from, but the one that tends to have the most and that covers the broadest range of topics is Academic Search Premier. So I'd recommend working with that one. And then once you do that, you'll need to log in. Once you're here, this is what you should see. So this is what the database search engine looks like. And at this point, you have a couple of options. I believe in the research bank, there are a couple of scholarly sources. And if any of those look interesting to you, what you could do is just search for the title here. You would need to make sure that you're clarifying that you're searching for the title, and then see if that comes up. So those are articles that have already been selected that are in the research bank. So you could look for that. But more likely, what you'll need to do is do some searching yourself. I do want to mention that there are not going to be scholarly sources on COVID-19 right now because it's such a recent topic. That doesn't mean that you can't find a scholarly source that would support an editorial you were writing about COVID-19. For instance, if you were writing about the impact that COVID-19 has on mental health, you could find a scholarly article on the impact of isolation on mental health, or the impact of certain kinds of social media practices on mental health, right? And that could still contribute to your research. So this is what makes it a little bit more challenging if you are writing about COVID-19. Again, if you have questions about how to make all of this research fit together, I have 3 hours, twice a week in office hours, where you're welcome to come talk to me. Email me if you can't make those times, and I'm happy to set up an appointment with you. Okay, so back to the databases, and this is going to be really important in terms of understanding how to find the sources that you're looking for. One of the most common questions or complaints I get is I can't find any articles on my issue, and that generally tends to be more because someone isn't using the database correctly, as opposed to because the articles aren't there. So one thing to keep in mind is that this is very different than Google, right? So generally with Google, we think the more we put in, the more results are going to come up. But for this database, the more we put in, the less actually comes up. So for instance, if I were to put in mental health and I were to search, and I have 400,000 articles, right? So that's a lot. And that means I would probably need to get a little bit more specific. So I might add college students, right? And these Boolean terms are really important. So now when I use the Boolean term and, that tends to make my results go down. And I can do this way, or I can do it this way. All right, so now that brings me to 5,000 articles versus 400,000, right? So just adding an additional term has narrowed my results considerably. So let's say I want to get even more specific so that I don't have to sift through all of these articles. I add the word stress, and now I've gone from 5,000 to 900 articles, right? So it might take some time and a few of these different terms to get you where you need so that you have, a smaller amount of articles to sift through. But again, this is going to really help you continue to refine your inquiry question. The other option that you have is to use the or, which is another Boolean term. And what this does is, and tends to make your results smaller or tends to make them bigger, right? And this is kind of confusing because oftentimes with and we think of more, right? But the database is going to be looking for articles that have all of the terms when you're using and with or, it's more just kind of replacing one for the other. So if I am looking for articles about stress, and I guarantee you this is going to be a huge number. So yeah, like 900,000. But if for some reason I'm like, oh, that's not enough, I need more, I might say, okay, stress or anxiety, and I guarantee you there's going to be way more now. So now I'm looking for articles that have either, so yeah, that pushes it to 1 million. So obviously I would never need this many, but if you're at a place where you're like, really looking for more articles, you could always use synonyms and this or to increase the number of articles that you're looking for. So these are really great tools for helping you to either find more or less sources. But I think the most important thing to remember here is that ultimately this doesn't work the same way that Google does, right? So if I just start putting words in here like the mental health of college students during first year, and I just start, putting in a bunch of words, I'm going to end up with no results, right? Because it's going to look for this combination of words. So keeping your terms really specific and not trying to put in too much at a time is what ultimately is going to help you find more sources. Okay, so what I want to talk about now is how to make sure that the sources that you find are scholarly. One thing I really want to emphasize is that not every source on the CSU database is a scholarly source, and sometimes we make that mistake. And you have had the opportunity to watch the quick video that talks about the difference between scholarly and popular sources. So you should have a basic sense of what a scholarly source is. However, even if you kind of know what a source looks like, there's really only one guaranteed way to make sure that you know that the source is scholarly, and that's by going to this limited to section down here and checking scholarly or peer-reviewed sources, right? So I had 42 articles, now I had 39, right? So most of them were, but you just want to make sure you're checking that so that all of these, so that you now know that all of these are scholarly, right? And so that is what is going to ensure for you that the source that you choose to identify as a scholarly source actually is one. And once again, you only need one for your synthesis grid. However, it's going to be really important that it is actually scholarly. That is going to be an important part of your grade, your ability to determine the difference. All right, so the last thing that I want you to understand about this database, and it's probably the most important thing, is that most of the time, these sources are not going to be available in their full text form, right? So you can see here how some of these sources say PDF full text, and in that case, you know that you can download that text right away, right? But most of the sources are not, that's not going to be the case. And I really don't want that to limit your decision about which text to choose. So this is why you want to give yourself a little bit of time. I would recommend getting started this weekend on finding your scholarly sources, because what you'll need to do is when you come upon a source where the full text is not available, is you'll need to hit find it at CSU. And what that does is that brings you here, and either you're going to see that you can view it online. So luckily this one does allow you to do so. But if that's not the case, so if I were to click on this, now I have access to this, and I can turn it into a PDF and save it. So in that case, you are able to see the full text. So this is sometimes the case, but if it's not, you will need to request the article through interlibrary loan. And so you'll need to go here. And generally, I do believe that you have to create your own account here. And it just, it takes a couple of minutes. And then it fills out all of the information for you. And you can just come down here, check the box, and submit a request. Now they often say that this takes 24 to 48 hours, but sometimes it takes longer, which is why I think it's a good idea to try to, send out for a few, right, that you think might be helpful. If you're able to find an article that you can see right away, that you think is going to go work for your scholarly source, definitely go for it. But don't let that be the only thing that that guides your decision in what source to find. Because you definitely want to make sure that your source ultimately is one that is also answering your inquiry question, and one that you can potentially use in your editorial. Right, so that should wrap up everything regarding how to find a scholarly source and how to use the databases. The only other thing that I want to talk about is what you want to say when you're evaluating credibility. So if you'll remember, in the synthesis grid, there's that section where I'm asking for a few sentences about how you know the source is credible. And when you do this, this is for all of your sources, you want to make sure you're actually addressing one or more of these questions. So I often have students say, oh, it's a scholarly source, or it's from the database. That is an inadequate answer, because I want you to dig a little bit further. So you don't have to answer all of these questions. I'm not going to go through them because there isn't enough time on the video. But these are the kinds of questions you want to look at when you're answering that question about credibility. And I will touch on this again in our next video, but these questions are now available to you, and you now have everything you need to get started on your synthesis grid. Ask me questions if you need to. Otherwise, good luck with your work, and I will touch in with you soon.